So it was good to fail.
Of course it was good, but it was also good because of the way I reacted, Mauricio. Because failure, it can be a good thing if you react the right way. Or it can be a terrible thing if you react the wrong way. So at that moment I realized that I was really behind. But I thought, man, what do I need to do to get better?
Ladies and gentlemen, old catchphrase. This is one of the most anticipated ACHISMOS. I've wanted to do these for a long time. I'm standing in front of a legend. I'll start like this, okay? I'll start off really nicely. It's hard when it starts like this, right? With a legend, people expect different questions, but I end up asking the usual ones like, how did you start? But I won't. I'm here with Flavio Augusto, who needs no introduction. Or you know him as a great entrepreneur, founder of Whiz Up, Wise Up. In some way, he was involved in the management, right? In the ownership of Orlando City. Or you know him as the guy who fought with 30 stoners during Perfeito.
Perfect.
Flavio Augusto versus Billionaire versus 30. And today we're not just going to discuss the billionaire issue and all that. On the contrary, man, who is he? Does Flavio Augusto cry? Has Flavio Augusto experienced failure? Flavio Augusto. What goes on in the mind of a great Brazilian entrepreneur? And first, I'm going to totally break the mood by giving you a gift from Insider. This is wonderful. Give the Insider gift to Flavio Augusto to take with you.
Flavio, thank you very much.
For your group soon, Insider will be all over the world. Thanks to Flavio Augusto, who will look after it here. He will scale Insider's business. Yes.
I got a shirt like this at your competitor too, right? Which one? Flow? In the back haze? That one is fake.
My coupon is better. That's Flow.
Tear it up. My coupon is the original one.
Flow's is fake, just to be clear, right? And first, I just wanted to talk about something behind the scenes. Flavio arrived, Flavio came by car, and there's no parking here. And Flavio handed the car over to Mateus to park. Mateus is a valet now. Perfect.
Perfect. He has no idea the risk he took handing over that car.
And it was really good that he gave you the car, and in just one block, you hooked up with 2 girls. Congratulations, Mateus. Congratulations. You're off to a great start.
Beautiful car, huh?
Mine? What? Were you afraid to press the buttons?
I was afraid.
It's a little scary.
Right? I was afraid to press it and press the wrong thing.
If you press it, the roof opens, something falls, you're screwed.
About success, I was just kidding. It was a big deal.
But it was a big deal, right? That's right.
The class looked at me. It was amazing.
Amazing. That's right. Flavio, I want to start with this one, man. You're a guy who's really successful. Your story is really cool. I follow you. I see a lot of your stuff. I wanted to start somewhere and understand your mindset since you already have a legacy and are willing to achieve even more. Have you ever doubted yourself? There's something, I want to go a bit more into the vulnerability side because a lot of people can connect with that because people look and say, okay, that's cool. Just like I saw you at Você Conta 30, right? People, employees. What he says is cool, but then what? What's the bad part about being you? What's something you've doubted about yourself?
Everyone has doubts, right? Especially early in life, given where I came from, you have those doubts, right? Because when a person, for example, maybe my son doesn't have the same doubts I had, but given where I came from, when you want to make something of your life, when you want to get things right in your life, you have a lot of doubts about your future. You're afraid of your future, that's natural. You have doubts, meaning you're afraid, right? Fear is a human feeling, yes, and it's good. Because fear keeps you from jumping from the 10th floor.
From being reckless.
From being reckless. You measure, you calculate, right? We just can't be paralyzed by fear, right? So, for example, it was a phase in my life when I was trying to get things right, and at first I thought it would be by being in the military. So I joined the military. I was in the military for 2 years. Yes. And passing an exam, a public service exam, is quite difficult. Yeah, at the time, there were 30,000 candidates for 200 spots to get into a career as an officer in the armed forces. That was my goal. So the first time I took it, I realized I was way behind. So, in the exam rankings, there were 30,000 candidates, and I was among the first 25,000.
Okay.
I was one of the worst, right? That was when I first realized I was an excellent public school student. Then, it was the first time I realized that public school is terrible.
Were you in public school until then?
Up until that moment.
I mean, just to explain to the people who just got here, yeah, you don't come from a millionaire background. No, you actually come from a humble background.
I lived in the outskirts of Rio de Janeiro and studied in public schools the whole time.
And then you realized, man,
He's not great at the top. I didn't realize it until that moment.
you were the top guy at school.
I was an excellent student, man, always praised. When I took that exam, I saw how bad I was. Okay, how far behind I was. And I realized how bad that school I studied at was. So it was good to fail. Of course it was good. But it was also good because of the way I reacted, you know, Mauricio. Because failure, it can be a good thing if you react the right way. Or it can be a terrible thing if you react the wrong way. So at that moment, I realized that I was way behind. But I thought, man, what do I need to do to get better? So for example, my mother used her salary to pay for my prep course. And as a result, I was among the top 25,000. At the end of the year, I asked her if I could take this course again. I said, look, if I do it for another year, I think now I understand. I think now I realize where I need to improve. I went for another year, man. I always tell this story, but never get tired of repeating it. She gave her whole salary, and it took me 2.5 hours each way to get to the prep course. So it was 5 hours on public transportation, which was also terrible, right? I don't know if you've ever taken public transportation.
Public transportation in Rio de Janeiro.
In Rio de Janeiro, it's terrible. You start on
The bus and end up on foot. It's terrible.
No, it's terrible. It's horrible. So, all right. Then I went for another year. I studied like crazy. I studied a lot. I studied like I never had before. I didn't pass either. I was probably among the top 5,000. That was better. I improved a lot, but there were only 200 spots.
But it's about your reaction, as you said.
It's how I react. And then I asked my mom if I could do it again. So I kept at it for 3 years, you can imagine, from age 13 to 15. You know that a whole year is an eternity for a teenager, right? So it was 3 years and I managed to pass. Then I was among the top students. In the Air Force exam, also in the Army exam and in the Navy exam, I passed all 3. I ranked high. But the point was this: I needed 3 years, paying a huge price to make up for the difference in the education I had received, right? And then I passed. On the first day in the Navy, I said, man, this isn't for me. On the first day. Because the Navy was really good for me. It was for my development, it was very interesting. But honestly, I didn't adapt to the military system. I was a guy who questioned everything, very creative. And the armed forces, as they need to be, are more structured. I spent 2 years in the Navy. Until I was 17, can you believe my father was an army sergeant? His lifelong dream was for me to be an officer.
You had a military upbringing.
I had a military upbringing. So, yeah, it was my father's dream, you know? And then, at the end of my second year, I was asked to leave the school, the military school. So, it was really hard for me at that moment. Because I had to go back home. Because I had left home, right? I went to live there because you live at the school, yes. And then I went back home and it was chaos, right? Chaos. I was expelled. Expelled, a total disappointment to my family, right?
What did you think you'd do with your life then, Z?
Man, I was happy when I was asked to leave.
Because you didn't want that for yourself.
But I didn't have enough judgment to leave. Or maybe I didn't have enough courage to leave. Because somehow I had some prestige because I was there, but I didn't want to be there. I was really young, but when I heard the news, I was happy. I didn't know what my future would be. Yeah, I had no idea at all.
That's cool to know, because I think a lot of people think you're the guy who, since you were 14 years old,
already knew what you were going to be, what you would become. No, nothing like that.
What did you want to be at 14? Did you want to be an astronaut? I don't know, man.
Why didn't I know? No, first when I was a kid, I wanted to be a firefighter, right? Yeah. It was my dream to be a firefighter. In a way, I put out fires. I mean, wow, even today, right? But deep down, we only dream about what is within our reach. You don't wish for what you don't even know exists, you know?
Christmas is the myth of the cave.
It's the myth of the cave. So within my horizon, being successful, in my view, was to be an officer in the armed forces. It's actually a great, successful career. But As I broadened my horizons, I started seeing other things and started wanting other things. Because you don't achieve something you don't fight hard to achieve, but you don't fight hard for something you don't desire, of course. You can't want what you don't know exists.
But what's the danger in that? Because today, right now, you have a much wider range. There are a lot of things you know. That Dunning-Kruger thing, right? It says that the more you know about something, the more you feel incapable of handling things, right?
I think the opposite, man. That's what I wanted to understand. Yeah, no, like making this journey now to the present day, Man, what was hard was riding the bus for 5 hours. Okay. What was hard was I got married at 20 years old and went to live at the entrance to a favela there in Rio de Janeiro. The boca of the favela in Rio is its main entrance, the prime area. Yes, it's the entrance to the favela.
Yeah, that's where foreigners go.
It's where the foreigner goes. I got married and moved to the entrance to a favela. What's hard is coming from where I came from and getting to where I am now. Today, man, I do what I think is interesting to do, what I want to do. I think that's the best thing about growing up. It's gaining the freedom to choose what you want to do.
But are you still afraid of anything?
Man, I have very little fear these days, man.
And how much of that, because, I follow you on Geração de Valor, by the way, I didn't mention it, Flavio's platform, and I see that you talk a lot about mindset. And the term mindset really affects Brazilians because Brazilians say, so you're saying, I don't know how to think, that my mind is limited, and somehow it makes you want to speak up. It gives me the impression that Brazilians, you mentioned that idea, right? About how the more you absorb things, the more potential you have. It's the myth of the cave. You're very closed off. Have you noticed that? Nowadays, you live in several places around the world and all. Do you think Brazilians have an issue with a scarcity mindset, and why? And why do we have this?
It's not just Brazilians, it's everyone.
Do you mean everyone has a scarcity mindset, including Americans?
Americans too, but for different reasons. For reasons, tell me.
What scarcity mindsets do people have in each place?
Yes, for different reasons. So for example, one of the things that appealed to me about joining the Navy was the stability, which is the myth of stability. There's a phrase I came up with myself, which is that stability doesn't exist. Stability doesn't exist. Stability is a fiction. But everything tends to deteriorate. Everything. Marriage tends to deteriorate. A relationship, a friendship, a company tends to deteriorate. Every business tends to end, tends to fail, tends to go bankrupt, unless there is some effort along the way to change that course. So the second law of thermodynamics talks about entropy. In other words, things tend to become disorganized. So there is no stability. A garden looks nice, it's beautiful because someone is taking care of it. If someone stops taking care of it, it will turn into a thicket. So marriage, two people in love. By the way, this year marks my 34th wedding anniversary. I married my first girlfriend.
She pursued me, man. I've been married 25 years.
25, right? Look at that.
I worked on Panico. That's important. Because I dealt with the panicates and I'm still married. Still am.
Look at that. So, 25 years, I've been married 34 years. Now, a marriage between two people in love, it only lasts if you take care of the garden. Otherwise, it will deteriorate. So, everything deteriorates, but the illusion of stability makes people adopt a life metaphor centered on security. So in your life, you either seek security or you seek freedom. So this is a matter of mindset.
So it's about control. You just want to control everything.
What's the premise of your life? No, man, I want to seek security. All right then. You're going to take a civil service exam. You're going to play it safe. You're going to be very afraid to make decisions. Now, if you seek freedom, you're going to take on more risk. You'll understand. Now, when you realize that stability doesn't exist, risk becomes normal, right? Because deep down, doing nothing is the biggest risk, of course. Or if you lean toward the security metaphor, which is the search for guarantees, right? Then we'll get to Brazilians. Brazilians love a guarantee. They love rights. They love a guarantee. This is an illusion. No law, no bureaucrat is going to sign a law and give you any guarantee. You have the right to this. You have the right to that. These rights, these guarantees, this myth that people believe in, make them live with a mindset built on a fiction, which is stability, the fiction of stability. And then you'll believe that you'll go to college, graduate, work for 40 or 50 years at a job, pay Social Security every year, and then you'll live off your retirement because that's a right you have. When we realize
it's control, so you can make a system so things go smoothly and you think it's going to work out until it gets out of your control and it destabilizes you.
Can you imagine, man, me? I remember that at that time when I was taking the prep course, I used to go to class. And I used to go through a place in Rio de Janeiro called Avenida Sububana, where the bus would be stuck there for over an hour in the middle of traffic. There, I would stand inside the bus and we would pass by several banks. Every time, once a month, there was always a huge line around the banks. That caught my attention, so one day I got curious and asked someone nearby what the line was for. And the person said, that line is for people to get their retirement benefits. So, a bunch of old people, man. And I would look at that line. I was 18 years old and I said, man, I never want to be in that line in my life. Because the poor old man, 40 degrees in Rio de Janeiro, waiting to collect a measly pension that the state purposely decided to make him wait in the sun so he dies and doesn't have to get in line anymore, to die faster.
It must be to put an end to retirement.
It must be. So here's the thing, Mauricio. Man, I looked at this and said, man, this system is really rotten, you know? Yeah, I don't want to be in this situation here, you know? To work 40, 50 years just to end up depending on the government to get a measly pension. I started selling watches. That's how my experience with money started when I fell in love, actually. When I fell in love with Luciana, who I'm married to. I'm still married to her today. And she was 15 years old, I was 18. Then I said, man, I lost credibility after getting expelled from school. I'm not gonna keep taking money from my dad, from my mom, just to go to the movies with Luciana, right? So I need to make some money. That's when I started selling watches. So I had calculator watches. I don't know if you remember those calculator watches. I sold that watch. I bought 2 more, sold them, bought 2 more, sold them, bought, sold, bought. I think I sold over 100 watches. Back then, when I was 18 years old, actually I was even starting my international career at that time, right? Because I was already going to Paraguay to buy watches, right? Then, that's when my career as a watch salesman was interrupted. But that's how I started making some money. And at 18, I remember there was a month when I made, in a certain month, more than my father and my mother together. Think about it. Selling watches. And so I did this during high school. I sold, I don't know, I worked 3 or 4 hours a day to sell watches. But you were a pretty quick guy then. Man, I was shy, you know. I've always been a shy guy. Damn, a shy guy as a salesman. But I've always been a shy guy. I wasn't very outgoing, you know. But I always say this, you need to have a reason to do things, and I had a reason. I was in love, I wanted money, and I didn't want to ask my dad for money. That was my reason, you know? Yes. And then, with this little bit of money I started making, I began to realize. I went back to my question. I said, man, why does a guy work the whole month, 44 hours a week, just to earn minimum wage? He spends 2 hours in traffic to get there, 2 hours to get back just to earn minimum wage. It doesn't make sense. I'm selling watches. Quiet. Everyone earns minimum wage. Really? I'm paying close attention here. You have to start selling watches, guys. Yeah. But go on, sorry. So man, I said, hey man, why is that? It doesn't make sense, you know? So, okay. Boom. Skipping ahead here, I started working at an English school right after that. Yeah, I was looking, I don't know if you remember the time of newspaper classifieds. I remember, of course. So, I was looking there to buy and sell watches. I saw there were job ads. Then I said, man, I'm going to check out what this job thing is all about. Man, I had never done a job interview before. My college was going to start in August.
Now I've done August.
I put on a dress shirt and went there to see what this job thing was all about. Well, I got there and the job was selling English courses. They didn't register me. I was never registered. I never had a formal work contract. But there, I started selling English courses. And selling the English course.
Just like selling watches.
Just like I used to sell watches, yeah. I said, man, it's actually easier to sell English courses than to sell watches. I didn't speak English, but that was an experience, my first professional experience selling, right? I wasn't. Then there was the script. You had training. You had the whole setup. For me, working in that business was a great sales school. I worked there for 4 years.
I mean, selling watches was trial and error. You didn't know how
to sell and
to sell. completely self-taught. And English was something like, what you're doing here is right, but let's improve this part. Exactly.
How cool. That's where I started to get trained. I worked at that company for 4 years. Then I got good at selling, and then I started building sales teams. I ended up leading more than maybe around 200 people there in that
Before you open anything.
thing, before opening anything. So the day I opened my first company, man, I knew a lot about sales. Okay, so it's like this. I didn't have much money to open it. Actually, a friend of mine was going to be my partner and have 50% of the business. But a week before, the guy chickened out. He bailed. He had to sell his voyage, a 1986 voyage that he had. He was going to be my partner, Matthias's father. He drives better.
Right? But is it, huh? I see. But here's my question. I'm going to bring it up for the people, who are watching this. There are a lot of people here who are in debt, man. Like the guy took out a loan for an apartment and now he has to pay $3,000 a month. He wakes up stressed because he thinks, if I lose my job, that's it, man. If something goes wrong, I'm screwed here. You're a guy who takes big leaps, right? Because you have a company, you have investments, you have interest rates. I brought here, Kaito from Chili Beans. Man, Kaito was desperate saying, dude, we made a bunch of purchases. The interest rates go up. I can't. How do you wake up knowing that sometimes you're in debt? Not really in debt, right? But you're leveraged there with a possible debt where you could overnight lose 10 million raised dollars.
How does your mind handle that? My situation is much more privileged today, Mauricio. I'm not leveraged, right? On the contrary, I have capital, I have liquidity. Today, I lend money instead of borrowing. It feels good to lend. Today, a large part of my financial investments is lending money to countries, to companies.
Do you set your own interest rates?
Yeah, actually, when you have the bond offer there, the debentures, those interest rates are already set, right? Okay, cool. So today, I'm not in that position, in that leveraged position.
Yes.
Man, but when I started my company, right, it's not that I was leveraged. I started my first company using an overdraft facility with 12% interest per month. So my reality today is very different.
And what was your reality like back then? Like, because I heard your story, I even told you, I thought it was amazing how you bought your apartment, you saw the apartment and said, man, I'd love to live in this apartment, but I can't afford it. I'm going to take a chance. And man, yes.
But at that point, I already had a company.
Okay.
By then, here's the problem, man. The problem is when a guy has a company and knows how to sell, has mastered the sales process, because let's understand this. What is Brazil's most prestigious job? It's a salesperson. The mother is going to ask for a job for her son. For her son, she goes to a friend and says, look, Juninho is playing video games. He's sleeping late, waking up late. I'm worried. Get him a job. Can you get him a job at your company? It can be anything, even as a salesperson. Even as a salesperson.
It can be anything.
So people have this idea in their heads. The guy didn't make it in life. He's going to be a real estate agent. He's going to be a salesperson. You can bet on it.
Man,
That's what people have in their heads. Yeah, it's true.
There's a problem. No proper training,
He's going to be a salesman, poor guy. So-and-so became a salesman. I remember when I started selling English courses, a lot of neighbors said, wow, Flavio was so smart. He joined the Navy and now he's selling. He became a salesman. But the truth is, Mauricio, the only thing that generates money is sales. Yes, the only one.
which is an exchange, right?
It's the only way. There is no other way. But I'm a public servant and I don't sell and know. It's the opposite. This guy sold 44 hours a week for a salary. Yes. He's a salesperson with only one client. Therefore, he's a hostage to that client. Yes. So, someone who works, I work. Yeah, you sold your time to the bank. So everyone is a salesperson. The only way to generate revenue is by selling. If your podcast doesn't sell sponsorships, it won't have any revenue. Yes, you have to sell. So sales is the only resource individuals and companies have to generate revenue.
In short, sales is the only real job that exists.
It's the only real job that everyone...
The rest results from sales. Thanks.
But then since everyone is a salesperson, there are people who sell time, yes, and there are people who sell products. Selling your time isn't a good deal since you only get 24 hours a day. And if you sell your time to a company, you can't sell it to more than maybe at most one more company. Then you don't have a life. So what happens? The real deal is this. The guy who has mastered sales, who applied this sales skill to create a business where he will sell his own product. This guy has the chance to get richer, to make more money, to have more confidence, because he has the tools, he has what it takes. I remember when I learned how to sell professionally, I thought, man, my life is set. All those fears, my insecurities, for me, they were over. I said, man, I can sell. If I want to, whenever I want, I can sell. I put as much money as I want in my pocket. So this self-confidence comes from breaking free from the system. Because the system puts the guy in a job paying Social Security to depend on the state getting a pension. I broke free from that model, you know? I got it. When I break free from that model and get the tools to make money and do business, now my confidence is different. Now I can buy an apartment and take a stand.
And every time you take a step, you say, my previous step has already validated me.
Each one verified. Every step you say,
my previous one has already, but then there's like Flavio, Augusto, man, you're living abroad now, right? You don't live in Brazil anymore and have several businesses. You mentioned you're coming because your grandson will be born. At what point does Flavio Augusto's wife say, Flavo, let's take a break, let's relax. Why are we still doing this? Because that's also a Brazilian mentality, like when I have 10 million, I'll stop.
So that's imaginary, okay. Because think about this with me, Mauricio. I'm 54 years old, right? You said I was showing up less, right?
You're good, man.
I'm really looking 53 and a half.
No, you're fine. You look like some of my 40-year-old friends.
40, yeah.
Who are messed up too.
Right? Kind of a deal, but let's go. Yeah, let's think about this. I'm 54 years old. All right, I'm going to say it like this. Okay, that's it. I'm not going to do anything else. Okay, what is my day going to be like?
Sad. That's it. I agree with you.
No, but you're about to travel. I already travel.
You already travel for work. I live?
2, right? I'm living in the 8th country. I've lived in 8 countries. I travel. I fly 280 hours a year. Okay. I already travel a lot and take a lot of trips. No, but enjoy it. I already enjoy it a lot. All right then, but, okay, let's suppose that, no, okay, I'm going to travel all the time, that's cool. So I traveled for a week, and then? No, I'm traveling for 3 months, then what? So, yeah, there's a lot to do, right? There is, man, so that's a fantasy. It's true, people picture it that way. It's a fantasy, man, there's nothing cooler than, but...
I think people have that idea exactly because they don't do it. Because they say, I'm at home all day working. Okay, I'm at Itaú working 24 hours and all that. He thinks when I quit this, I'll travel all year.
Here's the thing, Mauricio. Working a lot isn't the issue. I work over 10 hours daily.
Yes, today? Effectively, yes, that's it.
Even from that show, right? A billionaire sees the 30 workers, it's a joke. Maybe I work more than those 30 there, right?
They put you there, that's true.
Just the title already brings me down, right?
It's salesman. Even a salesman, yeah, even a billionaire.
But that's okay.
Yeah.
But let's go. Yeah, man, I work a lot. I work. That's my thing, working a lot. And I like working a lot. Remind me where I was here?
What do you mean?
What were we talking about before I went off on this tangent here about the 30 against?
You were talking and I asked when you'd say that's enough and stop. Then you said you don't want to travel. What will you do instead? Travel for 3 or 5 months?
That's it. So man, I work 10 hours a day. But man, it feels good to be productive. It's nice for you.
Excitement is no longer the result.
So, the money you're talking about?
Or do you just not care about that anymore?
It's interesting. No, it's a mix, okay? You like video games, right? I do. And which game do you play?
I'd say GTA, because it's something that takes a long time to finish.
GTA? When you play the game you play, do you care about the score you're getting?
That's true. I don't care. I care about the experience of the game.
The experience of the game. Yes. So money is the score in the video game.
All right.
Did you get it? All right. Playing video games is more fun. I told you I work 10 hours a day. The issue isn't the long hours. The problem is working and not having any prospects.
But when I die in GTA, I come back to life afterwards. When you take a fall trying to live this experience, doesn't it make you feel like, hey, Flavio, take it easy? You must have had a few setbacks in your career. Very few. That's what I wanted to understand. Very few. Because I imagine I've never gone broke. My guess leads me to,
Why have I never gone broke? Because I sell. Man, when you master sales, you control your revenue. Why does someone go broke? Someone goes broke because they didn't have enough revenue to cover their expenses.
And have you always been able to balance that?
Always.
I see.
Because I know sales. Man, sales are what make the difference. If Apple doesn't sell, Apple goes bankrupt.
Yeah, that's why when people say they're creative, I just say congrats.
But you have to sell.
What do you do with that afterwards? You have to sell, man. Yeah, I get it. But you, for example, I think that's kind of a common curiosity. Like, what does the guy do with all that money? People must ask that. Why have so much money? That's the big question these days.
Check Twitter. Why do I have so much money? Because I score high in video games.
The money?
The money is the points. You got good. When you get good at video games, you win.
But do you use those points or are you just saving them? No.
I use them a lot. Yeah, I invest a lot. I keep a lot saved, okay? Because that gives you a cushion so you can be bolder in certain actions.
Since we're discussing video games, which one excites you now after playing so many? Which one? Because imagine your life. I'm here with my own machismo, right? There must be a lot of people who get close.
Not many people?
Not many people?
Because people only get as close as you let them.
Ah, so you don't give people much space?
I appreciate the space you give, and I also give plenty of space. I give plenty of space to the people who are playing with me.
That's right, that's right.
We're playing on a great team. Okay, over there. I'm using the video game metaphor.
Wonderful.
Wonderful. Let's talk about that. Because money is the point of the video game. Now, does money also give you satisfaction? Of course it does.
Of course, because it's the point of the video game.
The problem, man, is the guy working at that bank you mentioned for 10 hours and not seeing any prospects in life. That's the problem.
Yeah, because you're not earning any points either, right?
And you're also earning very few points. And inflation is eating away, man, at people's purchasing power.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Today I made a different social pyramid, right? Based on my own opinions too. I have my own opinions and I classified it there. There's even a premium poor, right? Yeah, that's the person who makes between 20 and 30,000 reais a month. That's the premium poor.
Which in the past,
Used to be upper class.
it was very upper class.
Take a guy making 20, 30 grand a month. Man, if he has 2 kids, how does he pay rent in school for his kids?
In São Paulo, that doesn't cut it. It doesn't cut it.
It doesn't cut it. Inflation is eating away at people's purchasing power. Yes.
Yes, so he needs to make 50,000. But soon from anxiety and desperation,
Soon.
maybe he doesn't understand.
But the point is this. How are you going to get 30 or 50,000 in Brazil's social security system until your retirement? You won't.
You're not going to get that, right?
Even if you did get that, the cap for Brazil's social security system is 8,000 reais, 8,400 and change reais.
Yes, you'll be way below that.
You'll end up with 8,000 in the end.
All right, so even though you have this thing, you're 54 years old, you've succeeded in several businesses. What is the business that drives you? I'm not talking about the exact activity, but what moves your heart like, damn, I want to get into this? What is it? Are there some values that you set like, man, this has to be cool, sustainable, or is it simply, man, it resonated with me, I want to try this out?
I like people.
Okay?
I like to impact people. That's why I like working in education. In Brazil, basically my businesses were in education in Brazil and in sports in the United States, of course. So, I made a big investment in sports. I had a professional soccer club. I built a stadium there in the United States and sold it. So it was an 8-year cycle between the purchase and the construction. Value creation and sale is my focus. I always build and sell businesses. That's my model for entrepreneurship and investing.
So it's not just about selling, right? Because you're a guy who stood out as a good salesman, but you also discovered that building something for you to sell gives you a lot more resources.
Resources. Yeah, the first thing is I learned how to sell and I earned commission. Then I said, I'm going to launch my own product, I'm going to sell this product, and I'm going to make a profit. Okay. At another point, I thought, if I build a business that generates cash, I can sell this business. I can sell companies.
I see the choice you're making.
I sold products to earn commission, then I sold my own product to make a profit, and then I started selling companies, buying and selling companies. I see.
You cover the whole ecosystem from start to finish.
That's right, exactly. So, yeah, but I really like working with things that transform. I would never promote betting, never. Since I have a lot of followers on the internet, I've received lots of offers to do ads and I don't do them. Alcohol. I don't do it. I don't like to do anything related to alcohol, nothing related to that, nothing that I believe won't be good for people. So I like education because of that. Education is something through which I can contribute to people's lives.
And what's your view of Brazilians? Because you started back there at the beginning when we were chatting, you said, man, this scarcity thing isn't just about Brazilians, man. No, because you're a guy you were in Orlando, you talk to Americans, you probably have Arab investors. Can you say something like, man, Brazilians are really awesome and they just don't realize it?
Man, I like working with Brazilians.
What are the pros and cons?
Man, look, I like working with Brazilians. I think Brazilians are fighters. I think Brazilians are creative. Of course, I'm generalizing. There are scammers. There's all kinds of people, you know. But I actually like doing business in Brazil. I like doing business there. In the United States, I was really happy with my investment there, you know. It was a club that I built from scratch, and we made a sale. She doesn't know that you built it from scratch.
I thought you joined later.
Yeah, he was there from the very beginning.
All right. Everything was ready. We already had the name and the logo.
That's right, guys. Exactly. No, it's the club itself. It was in the 4th division there, wasn't it? So we took it and brought it to Major League Soccer and basically started that project from scratch, right? So that's how it was. A really cool investment. It was great both from a financial point of view and as a personal experience for me. Yeah, but for example, Americans, if you take an American couple, the guy works at a fast food place and the woman works at another fast food place. Right. 2 fast food workers earning minimum wage. These 2 get married, they manage to have a house, a car, and travel every year. Okay, yes, this is the reality for Americans. Take 2 fast food workers here in Brazil. The guy is going to live way out in the middle of nowhere. He'll spend 3 hours in traffic to get there, 3 hours to get back. He'll live really poorly and will barely be able to pay the bills. So, you see, the reality for Brazilians and the reality for Americans are different. It's totally different. Buying power. Purchasing power is completely different. What? Completely different. Now, where do I see the problem in both of these here? This guy can do all that because over there he has something called credit. Wow, totally. Which is cheap, abundant credit. So he can have a house, he can have a car, right? He pays much less tax on things. Here, the tax on cars in the United States that this fast food worker pays, in Florida, it's 6% on the value of the car. Here in Brazil, it's around 90% on the value of the car. Yes. You pay for 2 cars, And if it's imported, you pay for 3. 3 cars. 3. There he pays 6%. So the state bleeds him a lot less there, especially for that poor middle class guy. And here, the poor and the middle class, the state simply screws over the poor and the middle class. No, it's not the rich. They have money to defend themselves, invest, or move to another country. The poor and the middle class, no, they get screwed over by the state in Brazil. So you have these 2 realities here. This guy here, who has access to all of this, over there in the United States, he's going to be much more afraid to start a business than this guy here. Makes sense. So this guy here, why is he more afraid to start a business? Because he can still cover his basic needs with the life he already has. I mean, he doesn't have the need. He has less need, therefore less creativity, and he's going to be more afraid to take risks. Now let's talk about the Brazilian. Theoretically here, you'll find someone who will see that their situation is already very bad, which was my case. My situation was already very bad. What did I have to lose? I should have feared staying in that situation. That was so scary that I should have been terrified to stay like that. So what's the problem with Brazilians? They adapt. And he believes in smooth talk. He lets go of guarantees and rights. That's where the mess starts. It all begins here. This here is Latin American, yes, speech. It's that Latin American discourse about your rights. And you're the one who's wrong. Exactly. You're the villain. No, the villain isn't the state. The villain is the one who put him in that situation. No, it's the one who put him in that situation. I mean, the one who put him there was the state. He thinks it was. Exactly. And then what happens? This guy, when he believes in this set of thoughts, he's going to dive into mediocrity, into scarcity, and into mediocrity. I'm saying this with a lot of respect. So he gets comfortable. I understand. He adapts. Adaptation works like this. Humans are highly adaptable, which is beneficial. That's why we've survived over the years. And we settle, right? To conform is to take the same shape. Yes, to conform. Conformism is to take the same shape. But the point here is this. The point is that people adapt. So, let me give you an example. Have you ever seen that really stinky river? Polluted? Super stinky? Yes. You walk by and you can barely breathe? Man, there are people who live right next to the river. Yes, they're already used to the smell. Because the brain adapts and the person gets used to it. People tend to adapt to the unacceptable. I'll give a pretty intense example here. But a woman gets beaten by her husband. You have to go to the police. You have to go to the police and report the guy. But she thinks like this, no, he's a good man. He only hit me 10 times, that's all. Yes, yes. She adapts to that situation. She talks to herself, right? The brain decides, she submits to it. This adaptation on one hand is good for us to be able to survive difficult situations. But on the other hand, it's terrible because we settle for situations that are unacceptable. Brazilians suffer from a syndrome of adapting to the unacceptable, You walk down the street afraid of being robbed. There are more than 40,000 homicides. Instead of getting outraged, you buy 2 cell phones, one for the thief and one for yourself. For the other, you adapt. You get it? Brazil has a higher average number of homicides per 100,000 inhabitants than Israel. Israel is at war. It's higher than Russia, which is at war. Yes, if I'm not mistaken, I'll say it here. I'm sure about those two. But maybe it's even higher than Ukraine. Maybe it's higher than Lebanon.
We keep thinking, man, people in Ukraine must be suffering, but have they adapted too?
They've adapted, yeah. But here, man, the homicide rate per 100,000 inhabitants is extremely high. So Brazilians are becoming experts at adapting to what's unacceptable, right? I left Brazil in 2002. No, sorry, I left Rio de Janeiro in 2002. Because for me, the violence had already become unacceptable. I moved to Curitiba, I lived there for 7 years, then I moved to the United States. So I've been living outside Brazil since 2009. Yes. Yes, always doing business in Brazil, because I like to do business in Brazil. I like Brazilians.
What's the advantage of doing business in Brazil? Many people attend my courses and lectures on creativity, for example. Many people mention things I notice, right? When Brazilians go abroad, there are people who really stand out, right? Because they've picked up incredible tools here for creativity and so on. There's adaptation, but also the one who left.
And he looks. Some leave. He leaves.
Who leave? So if the guy left Bahia, which is a beautiful place with wonderful beaches, to go to cold Toronto, damn, this guy, he's really determined. He's going to make it happen. So that's the big advantage of Brazilians, creativity.
Creativity. I love working with Brazilians. I think Brazilians are creative. I think Brazilians are warriors. Yeah, and here we have a lot of bureaucracy.
All right, what's the bad part?
Very high interest rates, that's the bad part. There is an absurd level of government corruption, and this government corruption affects those who start businesses, because sometimes the business owner on the ground is extorted. Because of that, and when he's not being extorted by corrupt public officials, he's being extorted by the militia, by drug traffickers, who ask him for money so they can offer him some protection in the area. That's the reality. That's the real world in Brazil. That's the unacceptable situation we started with. To adapt, to get used to it, right? Now, what's the good part? Man, it's a booming market. We have 218 million inhabitants, at least 100 and some million. 100 and some million.
You know how to sell. You have 118 million inhabitants.
People who want to consume, who want to grow, young people who want to sort out their lives. Not everyone is used to this mediocrity, not everyone. There are people who want to break out, people who want to leave, people who want to grow. And this guy is willing to work, so like Brazilians work. When they want to grow, they're willing to work just like Camilo. All of this is very positive in Brazil.
Flavio, I can see you're really focused on leaving a legacy, man. I can see it here, right? You're a really cool guy, seriously, because we see other guys who are called billionaires and they're kind of hiding, just making their money, doing their thing. And you have this drive. Maybe it came from your education, right? Probably. This thing of, man, I want to change the reality of my country. I think you achieved so much that you said, man, you know what? I want to change Brazil through the private sector. You touched on it. Look, obviously you've already answered this question, but I wanted to hear it here. Do you already see this desire of yours to go into politics, Flavio Augusto for president, Flavio Augusto for senator, because from there you could make a change? Or do you think the private sector is the place where you can make the most effective change?
Come on, man, with all honesty, right? I abhor it. I don't want to get into that underworld, you know, man. With all due respect to those who are listening to me, to those who believe, with all due respect to the underworld, to everyone who is... I know there are people who really believe in politics, and I'm 54 years old. Every 4 years, the politician would show up in the outskirts with the same nonsense, with the same empty talk as always. If you go back to the outskirts today, it's the same. Things are actually much worse than they were before. When we look at when you look at Brazil, the way it's structured, it's the public sector abusing the population. And I say this with a heavy heart. Man, I'm not affected by this. I have money, I'm rich, but the poor and the middle class are abused every day.
And they defend it, but what about him?
Creates
narrative for him to defend.
I don't intend to dispel that belief. But if you look at it, public spending, man, if I'm not mistaken, this year Brazil will have a public deficit of more than 300 billion. In other words, then the government goes and borrows money, then interest rates go through the roof and people get poorer and poorer.
They can't get any money.
They can't get it because interest rates are sky high. Why? Because those guys fly in private jets and eat lobster at the people's expense. That's the reality. This isn't going to change, my dear friend. Yes, honestly. Just making speeches.
Rhetoric to get you, the citizen, to defend them, which is even worse.
This isn't going to change. Do you know why it won't change? Because there's something called the Federal Constitution of 1988 that keeps things the way they are. And if you want to change that, man, you'll go to jail for 30 years because you're trying to stage a coup. Do you understand? So it won't be possible to change. And worse, even if Congress changes it, it might end up even worse. Because all these rules are meant to benefit those who are already there, those at the top. Yes, that's how it always is. It doesn't matter if it's the right, left, or center. I'll tell you, the President of the Republic has no real power.
I have the same theory. It's nothing. To me, it's like a company. It's like Coca-Cola, which has Fanta and Sprite. Which one do you want, Fanta or Sprite? I'm Coca-Cola.
Coca-Cola, I decide. The guy is there for life, man. He's up there. He's there for life. He's been there for 30 years here. He doesn't depend on votes. He doesn't depend on being elected. He doesn't depend on anything. The guy is up there. In other words, he looks at the president, who's just a temporary tenant. This guy is there. If anything happens, just a little push and he's out. Yes, that's power.
It's power above everything.
Man,
who's playing as a pro? There are guys in that role there.
Am I getting into something like that? I get it. There's no way. It's a lost cause. But you
think that initiative?
Here's what I think. Brazil is not going to be Switzerland. Period.
Okay, let's get that into our heads.
But it's not going to be Venezuela either. That's another point.
It won't be that either because I think
I lived in Venezuela. You lived there? I did.
At the time before.
When Hugo Chavez was in prison, right?
Okay, you lived in a prosperous Venezuela.
Correct, before he ruined the country.
So, let's go. Yeah, we're living in a time where I think there are two classes, right? Let's put it that way. One is hopeful. Brazil is going to be like Switzerland. And the other says Brazil is going to be like Venezuela. I already know Brazil won't be like Switzerland.
Do you know why it won't be like Switzerland? Because the owner of the country doesn't want that. So, no president will... Who are the owners? Who owns the country?
The owner of the country doesn't want that?
It's good for him as it is now. The way it is now, it's good, man. Brother, look, I fly on private jets. I live in several countries. I have money for that.
Yes.
These guys have the same standard of living as I do. But with this money, I do it with my own money. Of course.
Of course.
Of course. They do it with the people's money. Yes, yes.
And you don't want to lose that standard.
These guys live like billionaires. Yes. This guy lives like a billionaire. He flies on private jets, stays at the best hotels.
Sometimes I have a theory that it's also in the whole world's interest for Brazil to be this way, because isn't it strange that some companies that are very proper in other parts of the world, when they come to Brazil, they launder money? Here, they take advantage of everything, or am I mistaken? Man, here it's kind of easy to pull off these schemes.
Really, 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 man. Big companies don't have room to pull off schemes, man. They're audited. You get it, man? So, man, obviously there are going to be the Banco Master types out there.
There's gonna be the scams that have always existed.
Outliers. Yes, you know? Because unless those are also partners in the scheme. Yes, yes. The national champions, the guys who are partners in the scheme.
You mentioned something really interesting. Brazil isn't going to become Switzerland, and it isn't going to become Venezuela either.
Why not Venezuela? The owner doesn't want it.
Okay, the owner doesn't want it to be Switzerland and doesn't want it to be Venezuela.
The owner doesn't want it, man. Lula could come in, some far left guy could come in saying they're going to bring communism here. There's no way. Yeah, he can't do it.
So Brazil is excellent for those who are comfortable in Brazil.
So this is Brazil.
It won't change. It hasn't changed.
It hasn't changed. And to change, it keeps being the same and will keep being the same. So, but Flavio, are you pessimistic? That's not pessimism. No, no.
That's realism.
Let's be clear. Once I realized this is a shady world, okay. Here's what I realized. The first decision I make is to stay away from this. Look, I've never done business with the government. I've never joined a bidding process. There's nothing wrong with it.
It's not illegal.
I want to keep my distance.
Okay.
I once owned a soccer club in the US. Every month over there in Orlando, people would show up. There were governors, mayors wanting to come meet with me from Brazil. They wanted to visit and meet the Brazilian club owner, but I never met anyone. I don't meet with anyone.
Okay.
Isn't that right, Cebu? No, I don't take those meetings. I post on my social media. Don't send me proposals. Don't send them. I don't want to know. I'm not interested in public money. No public money has ever gone into my companies.
Man, that's wonderful. Now,
why? Because I understand that this isn't how I'm going to get my life together. I just wanted to clarify something you said earlier. I don't think I'll change Brazil. Brazil won't change.
Because they don't want it to change.
I want to help change the lives of those who want to change.
All right.
Man, it'll just be one person here and there. They'll be the minority.
You notice that?
Yeah, because most people were indoctrinated to live within this model. There are a few rebels, outcasts, some misfits who will hear what I'm saying and think, man, this guy's talking to me. I don't want to be part of this system. I didn't fit into this system. I never fit into it. And I want this. Man, I want to be on a different path. Entrepreneurship, man, for me was the most subversive action I've ever known.
Exactly, it makes sense. I'm out because you're completely outside the system. It's Bitcoin.
My Bitcoin. For me, being an entrepreneur is my Bitcoin.
Entrepreneurship is the Bitcoin of things. Man, speaking of soccer teams, I think your journey with Orlando is amazing and all, but don't you want to buy Botafogo?
I don't like trouble, man. Dude, I don't want any trouble.
Let me call this, don't you want this Maria? 2008?
No, I got all the SF offers in Brazil. I got them, but again, man, why did I get into soccer in the United States and not in Brazil? In the US, soccer is a business. Soccer is a business. I was a shareholder in the league. I was the owner of Orlando and a shareholder in the league, which means I was, in quotes, the owner of the CBF. Yes, yes, I was the owner here of you.
I was a shareholder in the CBF.
I was a shareholder in the league.
Of the league?
Yes, got it? And I owned Orlando. So,
in Brazil, others were the same thing too, so everyone wants things to grow, so...
we were all partners. On game day, for example, I owned Orlando and Becker owned Miami when Orlando played Miami. Man, we played there to see who would win, and actually we beat them a lot more than they beat us. So, Becker was always the one losing to us. But, for example, every 4 months, we would sit down to meet, sitting next to the owners of Miami.
How can we improve the league?
We were partners.
We need the league to get better.
We need soccer. I used to feel like I owned soccer in the United States. So, I wasn't just the owner of Orlando. I owned soccer in the United States, the world's biggest sport in the biggest market in the world. Okay, so that was my... And why
isn't it like that for you in Brazil? Why do you think...
In Brazil, soccer is political.
Tell me more.
It's politics. The club president has to be elected, and then he'll do whatever it takes to get elected, even if it means putting the club in debt. How is it? In Brazil, a soccer club works like a country. No, but now we're going to create the SAF, The SAF is something separate. Do you believe in legal certainty in Brazil? I don't believe it. In Brazil, even the past is uncertain.
So do you think that Texter set up a SAF arrangement with the mindset of just any club president?
No, I can't speak specifically about Texter because I don't know all the details, right?
Yes, but basically it was a SAF that put the club even more in debt.
So, but it's because maybe he believed he was making a good deal, you know? I didn't get involved, I didn't get into any SAF, and I don't intend to, because here we don't have a league. Here we don't have a league, we have clubs that work in this very political way, you know? So this...
And one is a SAF and the other one isn't?
So SAF, exactly, I get it. So let's give an example here. Then you buy a SAF from Club X, and this Club X has billions in debt, but no, the SAF is separate. Separate because that's the deal, the club association. It's not the club association. Then there are billions in labor liabilities.
That's going to land on them, right?
Man, at some point a judge is going to make a ruling and transfer everything to the SAF.
It's the same, it's the local equivalent of a CNPJ.
No, but look, there's the law, but then someone signs it, sets a precedent, and that becomes case law.
Damn.
That's Brazil.
And why did you stop there? Why there? Yeah, because I sold it.
Well, because I had 2 billion reasons to stop, all right?
So they just wanted to buy it without you putting it up for sale?
Sure, but I'm always for sale, that's all.
Ah, let's talk about that.
That's cool, I'm always for sale.
Now's the moment I realize Messi just arrived in the United States. It's huge. Things are happening.
If Flavio has Becker's number saved,
Of course he does.
I'm a big fan of Brazil.
Dude, not Becker. Seriously? Don't text him. You already drove his car. Relax. Are you really going to text Becker? What's up? Did you lose? Everything okay? He's gone now. He's not there anymore.
Gone.
Stop. This must have Messi's contact info in it. But anyway, because now the American League is the big thing. Man, Messi went there and so...
But that's why every time you sell a company, you're selling the future. A company that's sold isn't sold in the present, it's sold in the future. So, I sold in 2021, predicting that the 2026 World Cup would be a turning point there. So you always push that perspective, right?
What was your profit in that? Did you buy and sell? How was it? What was your liquidity in the end?
From that sale, I sold it for 2.12 billion.
And how much did you buy it for?
Well, it was a series of investments over time, right? But my initial investment was, there's also the exchange rate difference, right? Yes. My initial investment was around 240 million reais to get in. Man, Flavio, yeah. But then there were some more investments along the way to be able to, wow, let's back it, wow. It doesn't hold much.
And from there, do you feel like going back to soccer or are you going to write a check?
I think it's already over. I think it's over. Mauricio, should we buy a team? Let's do it.
Botafogo, that's great.
It's a bargain.
Wow, you have 2 World Cup players.
I think it's already gone. But I like it. Nowadays, I work a lot with businessmen, right? Today, I have 2 businesses, right? One where I work with people who are already small business owners, making between 10 to 100 million a year. Anyone making up to 100 million in revenue is still considered a small business owner.
Reais, in reais.
So I work with a business education project that helps entrepreneurs grow and develop.
Accelerate them.
Right? Accelerate. That's one part. The other part is I work with people starting from zero, people who ride the bus, you know?
Which is the coolest part, which is your job as an educator.
Which is education. I offer free courses. I teach the classes myself. I'm a teacher myself.
I want to tell you myself, you who are watching, you who are in a situation like this, like, damn, I don't know what, forget about the 30 workers against the billionaire, because this workers' mentality is a bit annoying too, because it makes everyone out to be the villain. I know Flavio's work. Flavio is damn, a well-intentioned guy. I think you'll enjoy watching, because a lot of people think like this, damn, I make 1,500 a month, Flavio isn't for me. A lot of people think that, Flavio won't help me.
On the contrary?
Yeah, but people think that, right?
Because I think people need to broaden their perspective.
Don't you think the coach interfered? Some coaches show up and everyone has the same 24 hours, right?
Those don't get in my way, man, because I've seen a lot of trends. The coaching trend online, the digital marketing trend. I've seen all those movements. I think it's good. I think it's positive. I don't think it's bad, you know? Now, I think people need to, the consumer, he matures and evolves and starts to tell the difference between the big guru and the guy who's real, right? Because there are people, for example, like the whole coach thing, right? The guy who wants to get rich by teaching people how to get rich. Like the guy writes a book called How to Become a Millionaire, and he plans to become a millionaire by selling the book How to Become a Millionaire. That's the idea behind the coach. The audience is getting smarter and starting to figure out who's who in this story.
Money is getting scarce because you're not going to put your money just anywhere.
And my companies don't depend on that. I have 13 million followers on all my social networks, but my companies don't depend on that, right? My companies in total are going to make 2.4 billion this year in Brazil. My companies in Brazil. And man, if I contribute about 0.5%, 0.1% at most to my company's revenue with the work I do on the internet, that's the most it contributes.
Sure. Flavio, is there something you still want to do? Something you really want to do? I understand the education part.
But right now I have the following goal. I want to build a shopping mall.
I don't know.
One thing. No. I want. Today my focus is people, man. My focus today is people. So today we have a free learning platform, and I want to finish this year with 1 million students on that platform.
How many do you have?
We have 92,000 students.
This one just started. If the description of this video already starts, if I get 1 million things, I become a partner of IPO. Mara, imagine, because of the video, I get 1 million students. Let's do this.
Yeah, we're going to finish this year with 1 million students there. And we know that we're going to plant a seed for 1 million people. We're going to help. We're going to teach, because man, it all comes down to that, Mauricio. Broadening your frame of reference, you know?
Of course.
Because I was broadening mine, you know? Man, I remember I used to live on the 3rd floor of a housing project on the outskirts of Rio in a neighborhood called Bairro Jabur. And in front of my house, there was a guy who had a Beetle. It was a white Beetle, a big one, you know, lowered with big wheels. And every Saturday, he would wash that car. He would be polishing that car all day, right? Like that. I remember I used to stand at my window watching, and I said, man, one day I'm going to have a Beetle, man. I'm going to have that car. I used to look at that car. Man, we dream inside the box we're in, man, and we need to make our box bigger.
But that's why dictatorships exist.
That's it.
So you stay in your place.
So you stay in your own place.
Don't keep trying to open this box. You're supposed to be happier that way.
There are several types of dictatorships, right? It's not just governmental dictatorship. There's also the dictatorship of ideas.
Yes, it's mental. Which is when you create your own dictatorship. Like when you say, no, I'm not going, I also don't want to. What happens a lot in Brazil is, I do not want to go that far either, because you have seen how badly that can turn out. So I will not go that far.
Because one idea that traps people is thinking that to be rich, you have to be a crook.
That's also very common.
Man, everyone
Thinks a billionaire
is, look, I was poor and now I'm rich. I've met a lot of poor crooks. A lot of poor crooks. And I know rich crooks too. Being shady isn't about the size of your wallet. It's about the choices each person makes. That's part of being human.
But there's a lot of that. What you said is wonderful. I think it's even good. It's good to bring it up. There's a lot of argument, a lot of talk that someone only became a billionaire because you can't become a billionaire without doing something wrong. So there's that kind of talk. I'd like you to talk a little about this topic.
Man, what is that person basing this on?
It's based on guesswork, right? Yeah, just guessing. Guesswork TV. Guesswork TV. Because the person says, damn, if let's say the most you can make in a year is 200 grand, if I do everything right, maybe 500 grand. How did the guy get to 1 billion? With 1 billion, you could do so much. And then there's also, why don't you help Africa, Flavio Augusto? Why do you have that billion if you bought the jet? Why don't you help with the drought? So I ask you, I'm already asking you the question. Do you want me to answer? I do. I want you to answer.
It helps. 1 billion is nothing, man, but it's also a lot of money, right? It's a lot of money. But if you do the math, right? If you check how much is paid just for Bolsa Familia in Brazil per year, it's tens of billions of reais paid out through Bolsa Familia. You take 1 billion and soon the billion is gone. It disappears. I think the best way to share wealth is by sharing knowledge. It's not by sharing money or dividing it. You can give money. For example, I give a lot of money. Yes. I'm involved in several social initiatives, and I love social initiatives. You mentioned my dream. I haven't answered you yet, but my dream is to reach a point where I work only on social initiatives. In other words, I'm going to close all my companies and work only on social initiatives. And I want to use my knowledge to help some people. I'm not helping or changing Brazil. Yes,
Yes, you understand?
But you will change some people. You will.
For one person to help another.
That helps. That's the thing.
Network.
Of help starts to spread. But the best way to share wealth is by sharing knowledge. Why? Because if you give money, the money runs out. You give food, the guy eats, and then he's hungry again. Yes. So when you share knowledge, it's different. The person uses that knowledge to generate wealth. I'll give you an example. A doctor who usually earns above average only makes that above average money because he has knowledge. He studied medicine, he graduated, he did his residency, he did postgraduate studies, and with this knowledge, he is able to turn it into income. Yes. So when I share knowledge, I'm sharing wealth.
It's a little seed that's sprouting.
That's why I like education.
Because it's the first, right? It's the first step for you to achieve wealth.
Knowledge, you turn knowledge into wealth. I became rich because I acquired a lot of knowledge and put that knowledge into practice, and I still do it today.
How's your mental health? Is it okay? It's okay?
I'm not really that crazy.
But do you have something like, do you get anxious sometimes? I never did.
Man, look, I had a few episodes, just a few, some a bit more unpleasant, you know, which was in 2005 when I had panic disorder.
And the anxiety, right?
It's a peak of anxiety. But actually, man, at the time I thought, man, but everything's fine, my marriage is good, my businesses are good, I'm doing great. But I was already pushing myself hard.
Oh, come on. They call it a midlife crisis. 40, Flavio.
Yeah, at that point I was 33 years old. But you know what it was? Man, I was sleeping 4 hours a night, right? I was really, I'm the kind of guy who really wants to do things, you know? I want to live. I want to do things. So like, I slept very little, man. Then the bill came due.
So it was physiological?
Me, what was I able to do? I organized my sleep. That fixed it. Today, I sleep on average 7 to 8 hours a day.
Damn, that's good.
Good. No melatonin, no medicine, no melatonin. 7 to 8 hours a day. I don't take anything, man.
Do you meditate?
No, man, no. Then I end up doing what I shouldn't do. Still using my phone before bed. I shouldn't. Damn, I shouldn't. Man, I sleep like a baby.
Damn.
That's good. But when I disciplined my sleep, man, I got it under control. Cool. So that was the only event I had. And I remember actually that I had a panic attack, and it happened like this. I was in a meeting with 2 directors. And then in the middle of lunch, my heart just went boom. I said, damn, man, I'm having some kind of episode. Man, damn. Then I said, I'm having some kind of episode, man. Then what's this, man? Man, let's go to the hospital. Let's go to the hospital. So we went to the hospital. The 2 directors took me to the hospital. I went into the hospital looking like a woman in labor. The doctor and staff rushed over, grabbed me, put me on a stretcher, and quickly moved me, saying, okay, here you go. Bam, 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 bam. And then I stayed there. They put me there, gave me a little shot of something which I think was a mild sedative. 2 hours later, the doctor arrived. So, how are you? I'm better. But doctor, what happened? Is something wrong with me? No, you're fine. There's nothing wrong with you. All the tests here show nothing. It's here. Then I said, but how am I going crazy? No, you're not crazy, man. How are you? Are you working a lot? Are you upset about something? No, I'm just sleeping 3 hours. No. Then he said, man, what you're having must be a panic attack. Yeah, man, there's no reason for it. So, man, I went to a neurologist, you know. So I asked him, man, has anyone ever died from panic disorder? He said, panic? No, man. So nothing's happening? He said, no. I said, okay. So I decided to start treatment, which was a treatment I came up with myself, right? I make up these things. Man, I'm going to sleep. I'm not going to have meetings during lunch anymore. I took a break, you know? Yeah.
I'm going to reorganize.
I'm going to cut out coffee because coffee makes me really jittery. Yeah. I'm going to cut out coffee. Then I calmed down a bit. That's when I moved to Australia and made the most of it.
I think it gets better, yeah.
No, then I got better. After that, I never had anything like that again.
Man, Flavio, I really wanted to thank you, man. No problem, man. This conversation was awesome. I want, once again, to invite people to get to know your work better. I think you're the man. Thank you.
Fantastic.
Fantastic. I'm really a fan of yours. Thank you. Yeah, even so, I follow you. I watch your stuff a lot, and I hope you have more people you can transform and somehow help the Brazilian mindset to evolve. Flavio, thank you once again. It was a pleasure, a real pleasure. I want to thank Insider for this wonderful episode, and Matthias is going to get your car now. I'm running over there. I'm going to get the car. He's going to get the car. Make sure to leave the air conditioning set to 17. All right then?
Thanks, Matthias. No problem, Flavio.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone. Take care.
Okay, thanks. Bye-bye.